The golden evening sun painted the skyline of Dubai in shades of amber and pink. Luxury cars glided down the wide streets, their polished surfaces gleaming like jewels under the fading light. Tourists bustled through the lavish avenues, their voices forming a melody of countless languages, English, French, Chinese, Russian, all merging into the hum of the city. Among this sea of wealth and glamour sat Layla, a girl whose presence seemed out of place yet quietly unshakable. She was perched on a small wooden stool just outside a café, her thin figure hunched over a faded notebook. The straps of her sandals were worn, her dress simple and slightly faded, and yet, there was a strange dignity about her. With every flick of her pen, she scribbled words, repeating them under her breath as if they were spells she was determined to master. Layla was only 19, but life had carved wisdom and strength into her soul. Her family lived far away, in a small village, where her mother struggled with an illness that made even walking a challenge. Layla had come to Dubai not for dreams of gold or riches but for survival. She worked as a cleaner in the mornings and as a cafe helper in the evenings, sending nearly all her earnings back home. What she kept for herself was enough only for a single meal each day, and for a few second-hand books she cherished more than anything. That evening, fate introduced her to someone who would test her spirit. A sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the cafe, instantly drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Out stepped Sheikh Omar, a wealthy Arab millionaire known in the area for his lavish lifestyle and sharp tongue. His crisp white Candara was spotless, his watch encrusted with diamonds that glistened in the twilight. Wherever he went, whispers followed, some in admiration, others in envy. As Omar approached the cafe counter to order his coffee, his sharp eyes fell upon Layla, who was still immersed in her notebook. Something about her intensity made him pause. With a half smirk, he leaned slightly toward her and asked in Arabic, "What are you scribbling so furiously, little girl?" Layla looked up, startled, but quickly regained her composure. "I am practicing translations," she replied softly, her voice carrying a calm confidence. "Translations," Omar chuckled, his laughter carrying to those around him. "And what do you know about languages? You probably barely manage Arabic." The bystanders, tourists sipping coffee, locals strolling by, chuckled along with him. It was easy to laugh at a poor girl with a tattered notebook in a city where success was measured by luxury. But Layla's gaze didn't waver. "I speak 9 languages," she said simply. Her words fell like a stone into water, rippling through the laughter until it turned into murmurs. Omar raised his eyebrows, then let out a loud laugh, almost mocking. 9. That's richer than me claiming I own the moon. Come on then, prove it." The crowd leaned closer, curious, waiting to see how this poor girl would embarrass herself. Layla calmly closed her notebook, straightened her back, and prepared to silence their laughter with the only weapon she had, her voice. Layla inhaled slowly, her fingers brushing the cover of her notebook as she closed it with quiet finality. The crowd around her leaned forward, smirks still plastered on some faces, curiosity blooming on others. Omar stood tall, his diamond watch glinting under the cafe lights, convinced she would stumble and embarrass herself. But Layla's eyes were steady, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. She began in French, her accent soft yet precise, every syllable carrying the rhythm of a native speaker. "Bonsoir, monsieur, je suis honoré de vous parler aujourd'hui." The words rolled off her tongue like music. A tourist couple seated nearby, Parisians who had been quietly sipping their lattes, turned instantly, eyes wide. The woman clapped her hands together and exclaimed in astonishment, "Parfait. She sounds Parisian." Without missing a beat, Layla shifted into Spanish. "La vida no se mide por lo que tenemos, sino por lo que damos." Her tone carried the warmth of southern Spain, and a Spanish businessman who had been typing furiously on his phone froze mid-message, his jaw dropping. "Incredible," he muttered, shaking his head. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. But Layla was only getting started. Her voice transformed as she glided into Italian, her words flowing like the rolling hills of Tuscany. Then she switched to German, her diction sharp and authoritative, as if she were giving a lecture in a Berlin university. People from different corners of the cafe began pulling out their phones, recording what felt like a rare performance unfolding in the middle of an ordinary Dubai evening. But she didn't stop there. With seamless precision, Layla spoke Mandarin, her tones exact and fluid. A Chinese businessman who had been loudly speaking into his phone stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he whispered to his companion, "Ta shuo de hen hao." "She speaks so well." The ripple of disbelief spread further, and more phones were lifted into the air to capture the moment. Russian followed, her consonants crisp, her intonation natural enough to make a Russian tourist murmur, "Ona говорит, как budto ona is Moskvy," she speaks as if she's from Moscow. The laughter that had mocked her minutes ago had completely dissolved into awestruck silence. Then came Hindi, her words lilting with the softness of someone raised in the heart of Delhi. An Indian family nearby exchanged shocked glances, smiling proudly as if she were one of their own. Finally, she switched to Japanese, bowing her head slightly as she spoke, her sentences layered with humility and respect. The cafe was now silent except for the sound of her voice. When she finished, she returned to Arabic, her tone elegant and commanding, and recited a verse from classical poetry. He who seeks knowledge owns treasures beyond gold, and he who builds bridges speaks to every soul. The final words hung in the air like a spell, settling into the hearts of every listener. Applause erupted, not hesitant, but thunderous, filling the cafe. People who had mocked her now clapped the loudest, some even cheering. Omar, however, stood frozen. The arrogant smirk that had danced on his lips was gone. His eyes, sharp and calculating, softened into something that looked dangerously close to respect, or perhaps shame. He had laughed at her for daring to claim what seemed impossible, yet she had humbled him with truth, not bravado. Struggling to regain composure, Omar crossed his arms. Languages, he said, his voice quieter now but tinged with prideful resistance, are clever tricks. But tricks don't make money. Layla looked at him steadily, her posture calm, her eyes glowing with quiet defiance. Maybe not, she answered softly, but they build bridges that money cannot. Her words struck him harder than any insult, echoing in his chest long after the applause faded. For the first time in a long while, Omar had no immediate reply. That night, Omar returned to his mansion overlooking the glittering city. From the windows of his study, he could see the lights of Dubai stretching endlessly, each tower a monument to wealth and ambition. Normally, such sights filled him with pride. Yet tonight, the glow of the skyline did little to silence the echo of Layla's words, "They build bridges that money cannot." He poured himself a glass of water, but his hand trembled slightly as he lifted it. For years, he had believed that money was the greatest language, the one that unlocked doors, commanded respect, and silenced all opposition. But in that cafe, a poor girl in worn clothes had spoken 9 tongues that connected strangers instantly, uniting people from different worlds in admiration. It unsettled him in a way his rivals' insults or business losses never had. Sleep refused to come that night. He replayed the scene over and over, the mocking laughter, the hush of the crowd, the applause that rose for her, not him. By dawn, Omar made a decision that surprised even himself. He would go back, not to mock, not to test, but to understand. The next morning, the cafe was quieter, the early hour keeping the crowds away. And there she was, Layla, sitting at the same stool, her notebook open, her pen scratching eagerly across the page. There was no audience this time, no cameras, no clapping. Just a girl, hungry for knowledge. Omar watched her for a moment before approaching. She looked up, recognizing him immediately. For a moment, she seemed wary, as if bracing herself for more ridicule. But Omar's tone was different this time, stripped of arrogance. He sat down across from her and asked, "Tell me, how did you learn so much?" Layla's expression softened, and she set her pen down. "Books," she began quietly. "Old ones from libraries, second-hand ones from markets. Sometimes I listened to tourists. They would laugh when I mispronounced words, but I didn't stop. Every language I learned felt like a key. Every sentence gave me freedom. Even when life tried to cage me, I could still fly in words." Omar listened in silence, the usual clever retorts absent. For the first time in years, he felt like a student sitting before a teacher. He thought about all the money he had spent on cars, parties, and jewels. None of them carried the kind of power Layla had shown, the power to inspire, to unite, to silence arrogance with knowledge. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a sleek card and placed it gently on the table. "You don't belong here," he said firmly. "Come to my company. I'll give you a scholarship, and a job as a translator. The world needs someone like you, someone who can speak to every soul." Tears welled in Layla's eyes, though she tried to blink them away. For years, she had dreamed of opportunity, not charity, and here it was, offered because she dared to believe her knowledge had value. She placed her hand on the card, nodding once. At that moment, in the heart of Dubai, 2 lives changed. Layla's path opened toward the future she had always imagined, and Omar, a millionaire used to commanding rooms, discovered that true wealth is not counted in dirhams or jewels, but in the treasures carried within the human mind.